Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammāṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammāṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. So nice to see everybody here. Got the crew. When I was young, we used to call our group of friends. You'd call them a crew, you know. And so then you'd go places with your crew. So used to joke with some friends of mine. We used to get together to meditate near Roncesvalles, and I think they're still going strong. And we used to call us, I used to always be thinking in my head, the meditation crew, you know. So today was a nice day. Now weather is changing a bit, and getting a bit cooler at night. Still warm during the days. Sometimes bring the coat, sometimes not. And today headed out Pindapat as usual. In the morning, monks go on this kind of alms round, where they kind of take their bowl and they walk around in the community. And traditionally in Sri Lanka or wherever, that's some places that's how monks live. You kind of live off the food that people put into your bowl. So then you end up eating whatever food the people there eat. Whether they're kind of rich people or poor people, that's what you eat. Or whatever you get. And it's a kind of a very beautiful tradition. And like so many kind of things in the Buddhist teachings, it's one of these traditions that has more than one meaning to it, kind of more than one purpose. So, the obvious purpose what people see is you're doing that to get food, kind of walking around to get food, which is, that's, if people want to make merit by offering food, that's up to them. But as a monk, you don't usually go around with the thought, give me food, kind of go around with the thought, if anybody wishes to make merit, then this is their opportunity. If not, that's okay, that's up to them. And this is kind of one purpose. It gives, it's something that traditionally as a monk, you're to think, this is something that I'm doing for the lay people. Not so much I'm doing this to grab the most food that I can get. Because monks don't traditionally possess a lot of wealth. So this is the way that they interact with the community. You go out on Pindapat, one of the ways, and you get food there. And then from time to time, people will invite you to their house, and you go to their house, and they offer you food, and you give them a talk. And then you go back to wherever you're staying, and you spend the day practicing. This is the kind of ideal that they give in the canon. And this is actually, when you do this kind of practice, this practice of Pindapat, you see the kind of the brilliance of the Buddha's teachings, because regardless of we're here in Canada, as you walk around, you end up interacting. With all the people in the community, right? You don't just, you can't just stay solely with Buddhists. You can't just stay solely with people who necessarily know what you're about. Of course, in a Buddhist country, people would know what you're about, but you end up interacting with many kinds of people, Some people kind of very happy to see you, which is amazing, even though you're in a non-Buddhist country. There are people who've never seen a monk, but they see you walking around on Pindapat, and they'll be like, I'm so happy to see you. Like, it's great to see you out walking. I love seeing you walking. And they're just happy, And of course, they don't know me. It's not about me. I mean, it could be any monk wearing a robe, but it's a sign that there's somebody there in society and they're seeking happiness outside of the normal means. They're a poor person, they're seeking happiness. They don't have a lot of money, seeking happiness. They don't have the best foods, and they're seeking happiness in ways apart from all these things. And I think some people instinctively react to that. Kind of same way, maybe from time immemorial, people have been getting kind of bitten by spiders and snakes, and even little kids, they see maybe a spider or a snake, and it's like, oh, wow, kind of this instinct. And probably from the time that people were cavemen, cave women, there have been some people who were kind of, had a religious role in that community. And they probably wore a robe of some kind because it's cheap and it's easy to make, and it's modest. So this has always been a traditional religious garb in a lot of different societies. And so probably, even for people who've never seen, don't know anything about Buddhism, it has this kind of effect. But then, of course, as a monk walking around, it's not the case that you're just always getting praised. It's kind of the interesting thing, being, you see the brilliance of the Buddhist teachings, because some people you interact with will be extremely happy to see you, and other people will be extremely unhappy to see you. In Canada, it's honestly, it's probably like 90% of the people are very friendly, and then there's a small portion who are like, oh my gosh, this is great to see a monk. And then at the other end, there's another small portion who are kind of angry when they see you. So actually today I was walking and I stopped to take a stone out of my shoe. And I was just kind of not paying attention. Just kind of a normal day, walking on the usual route. And then I hear this bang, 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 bang at this window. And I look up and this lady's like, rah, rah, making these kind of wild gestures, like, rah, from her window. And I was like, I don't know, I have a stone in my shoe, so I'm trying to get it out. And then she opens her window and she's like, go pray at somebody else's driveway. Go pray at the next neighbor's driveway. And I said, I've got a stone in my shoe. But I don't think she heard me because she shut her window and kept going like this. Kind of very angry. She was on the phone. So then I took a few steps and I walked a bit and I turned around and I came back and she was there kind of watching me as I walked and watching me as I came back. And I pointed at my shoe and I was like, in here. And I was like, no, not praying. Taking a stone out of my shoe. And so she was still doing this, Anyways, that was kind of one of the funny encounters. But it's very rare that you encounter that. But still, you see the brilliance of the Buddhas establishing this teaching. Because in traditional Buddhist countries, people respect your role as a monk. So you go to a dana, and people often will have spent the whole day cleaning their house. And they'll put white sheets on all the things you're going to sit on. And all the food they serve you is the best food that they could select. They go to the market and select the best fruit, the best vegetables. And they get their friends together and they all bring their best stuff and they spend time cooking it. And then you show up at the dana and everybody bows to you. And then you walk over to the table or wherever, the table or the floor, wherever you're sitting, and then people come by and serve you food. And while you're eating, you keep eating, and if they notice you're running low, they come and serve you more. And they keep serving you until you tell them that I've had enough, And you keep eating like that, and they stand there and they don't eat the whole time you're eating, because they're just serving you. And then when the dana is done, then usually you give a talk and you leave, and they eat after that. So there is this kind of one aspect to the Buddhist teaching, to being a monk, is that people will kind of praise you. But then there's this other aspect where once you leave that house, you're not allowed to store up food, so you don't know where it's coming from the next day. Kind of not 100% sure. And all the food you eat is technically supposed to be offered to you. So that means you can't store up a bunch of food and cook it up and eat it. Somebody has to be there to give it to you. So in other words, every day you have to beg your food afresh. You kind of walk your food afresh, and you encounter all kinds of things. And the brilliance of the Buddha's teachings in this is that all the time, all of us, regardless of whether we're monks or not, we're constantly encountering kind of praise and blame. Kind of people criticize us, people praise us, and this is something that we can't escape. Actually, my monastic name is Atula, and Atula is a character in the Dhammapada. And in the Dhammapada, there's a verse by the Buddha where he says, "O Atula, they criticize those who are silent, they criticize those who speak a lot. There's nobody in this world who's entirely praised or entirely criticized." In other words, we all get a mix. And actually, the Buddha himself was not entirely praised and not entirely criticized. The Buddha himself got a mix. Actually, the Buddha's cousin tried to kill him. It's a whole long episode in the canon where the Buddha's cousin split his following and tried to convince everybody he was very lax. And so, of course, as a monk, you see the brilliance of the Buddha's designing these things, because in encountering both praise and criticism, there's a tendency for our minds to launch out towards the praise and to shrink away from the criticism. So as a monk, you kind of encounter this all the time. So somebody, or as a layperson, if you do a really good project at your work or wherever it is, get really good grades in school for a while, things seem to be going well for a while, it can be like, this is who I am. Kind of, I'm a person who can do this. I'm a person who has these interactions with other people. Kind of this praise. And there's this kind of phrase in the Western world, kind of praise going to your head. In other words, somebody praises us and it goes straight to our head. And we almost get kind of intoxicated, like, whoa, I'm great, And we're kind of going around thinking everything is great, I'm great, and we're way up there, And then after a while, somebody criticizes us, and all of a sudden, it's like way down in the dumps. Kind of, oh, my life is terrible. I can't do the things, I used to do. Right? And this is the way that kind of the world revolves in around itself, right? Because the interesting thing about praise is that, I know you might notice when we practice, is when we get praised, we actually tend to get heedless. This kind of thing, not. If the praise goes to our heads. And when we're getting a lot of praise, things seem to be going well, we lose the kind of edge of attention, kind of this heedfulness. Paying close attention to our actions becomes more difficult. It's almost like this intoxication, like, whoa, things are great, And of course, we get intoxicated like that, it becomes more difficult to do things mindfully, to do things skillfully. And so it's often when people are intoxicated by this praise that they say harsh things towards other people. Kind of, sometimes I go to Bhante Saranapala's sittings in Mississauga. And he teaches at these corporations a lot. And he's always saying, please, CEOs, don't be mean to your employees. These kind of CEOs get this power, kind of get a lot of praise. They have a lot of money. Everywhere you go, you have a lot of money, then people kind of stop and respect you. Kind of, this is who I am. Right? And when this kind of thing happens, it goes to our heads. We get heedless. You kind of start to speak to people harshly, Start to speak to people dismissively. And of course, these kind of things are actually the habits or qualities that lead to a downfall. So, actually there's one monk here now, he's reading, he's going through his English exams, he's kind of reading Macbeth, these kind of Shakespearean plays. And in these Shakespearean plays, these characters always have this kind of fatal flaw. They tend to have this flaw that just, they're always like a tragedy. Like, these Shakespearean plays, they start people just going along and things keep getting worse. Then at the end, something really terrible happens and like everything blows up. And often this kind of fatal flaw is this kind of pride. These characters are often like kings or noble people, and they start to think really highly of themselves because of this kind of pride. And so then there's this phrase, possibly stemming from all this talk about pride in Western literature, that it's this kind of pride that comes before the fall. So you can see these characters in these plays, they keep doing things more and more heedlessly. Like you're reading it, you're like, please don't do that. But of course they keep going, doing something more and more unusual, more and more outlandish, on the basis of this pride. Because the tricky thing about this is that the skillful tendencies that we build up, the good things in our life that we build up, that we develop pride around, they have a momentum to them. They don't just kind of appear and disappear. Right when we put the cause into place for something good to happen, it doesn't arise immediately. And when we stop, it doesn't disappear right away. And this is the reason why often we can get tricked into thinking that these qualities that arise are a sense of self, that they're really who we are. Because even in these plays, when these characters do their first really bad thing, all their wealth doesn't disappear right away. All their good things don't disappear right away. It's only after they've accumulated these causes for so long, and then these things start to ripen, and then before long, they get this ripening of their bad karma, and they get the fall. But before it all was this kind of pride, this kind of conceit. I am. I'm a person who can do this. I'm a person who's X, Y, Z. I'm a person who's like this. And when we think we're a person like this, that's in relationship to other people. You start to think other people are like this. I'm like this, I'm smart. Other people are stupid. I'm fast. Other people are slow. Or it could be the opposite. I'm terrible. Other people are great. All comes from this kind of same thing. This kind of idea that we have this enduring self. And so this is so convincing because when we put these kind of causes into place, we become somebody who's, we feel we're really competent, That builds up through a kind of string of causes, through things that sometimes extend far back, sometimes going to school for long periods of time, sometimes developing skills, Developing these skills, they last for a bit, They're relevant for a bit, perhaps in our professions, And we do a good job, and we think, I'm a person who can do a good job, And of course, we get this kind of terror if that changes at all. And so the brilliance of the Buddha's teaching for his kind of monk disciples is that you can't store up anything. So when you can't really store up any food, actually every day is like that. Every day is fresh, If something good happens one day, it's disappeared by the time the next day rolls around, Kind of something new, something bad happens, okay, well, next day, possibly another alms round, possibly another place. So the thing about these things that the Buddha teaches us is not to get sucked in to things when they're going really well. Things going really well, not to develop a sense of pride, like this is who I am, I'm a person who's got all these great things. And the opposite too, when things go badly for us, Not to develop this attitude, oh, I'm this person who's terrible. I'm this person for whom things will never work out. Actually, all these things arise and pass away according to causes and conditions. So when we realize this, what we do is we learn to manipulate the causes and conditions for the sake of growing in wholesome qualities. So for example, if you're a monk going on alms round, and you think to yourself, oh, I'm a great monk, people love me. This is really excellent. You have this kind of really big ego, and you stop to take a rock out of your shoe, and somebody curses you, You can fly off the handle and get totally angry, Or, your ego just gets shattered right away. You just feel terrible. I'm some terrible monk now, You go to a dana and people bow to you, and you think, oh, I'm really, really great, you know? And then the next day, you go out and there's no dana scheduled, and you get not that much food in your bowl. And that day you're hungry. You know? In other words, you learn not to attach your mind, well, at least the lifestyle he creates is so that monks don't learn to send their minds out to attach to praise, learn to send their minds out to attach to blame. Not to say that every monk is perfect at this, of course, it's not. But the brilliance of the Buddha's kind of system is that it encourages this. And the same way, not just for monks, for his lay disciples, for people learning to meditate, this is something that we can train ourselves in as well. When something good happens, we notice this kind of feeling like, whoa, this is excellent. And we can learn to pull our minds back from that, to keep them focused on training in wholesome qualities. Whoa, what's going on? And the thing we tend to notice there is when we pull our minds back from that to train in wholesome qualities, we notice this kind of sense of heedlessness and intoxication that can kind of arise when things go well. It's like, oh, this is how I've been building this kind of sense of self. And when we start to do that, the benefit of it is that when things go badly, we don't believe in that either. I'm a terrible person. Things have gone badly, And I just failed this test, or I just made this mistake, or these 10 people in a row just said something terrible to me. Sometimes bad things that happens in our life are like this. It just seems to keep going on and on and on and on, Same things with good things. Sometimes they seem to keep going on and on and on and on. So when we only have the consumption of external experience, when we only have, okay, I'm a really great CEO, this is who I am, we go to eat that and become that. Then when these things fall away, we're almost left with nothing. And we've grabbed onto this thing, and we're like the person who is kind of, climbing a tree or something like that, and just grabs onto this branch, and they're holding on to only one branch with both their hands. Now that branch breaks and snaps. Then they fall to the ground and crash. Feels terrible. But the option that the Buddha gives us is that although we have to kind of grab onto these branches to climb the tree, keep our hands on the center too. Keep close to the trunk. Grab onto more than one branch. In other words, when these good things arise in our life, when external good things, when success comes for us, when people praise us, when they say good things about us, we have our hand firmly grasped onto these wholesome qualities. This is what's really important to me. Whether people praise me or not, this is what I want to cultivate. When bad things happen in our life, we stay close to the trunk too. I want these wholesome qualities. This is what's important to me. This is what I want to cultivate. And the benefit of these things is that when good things happen to us, our mind doesn't necessarily launch out to them so much. When bad things happen to us, our mind doesn't launch away from them so much. So we become less like a person who's running to the left, running to the right, and more like a person who's going towards the center. Like one of these clocks, when you set the pendulum swinging, and it goes right, left, and it gradually goes towards the center. So we learn to place our attention on wholesome qualities in this way. We learn to place our attention on our practice of meditation, on the development of the Dhamma. We learn to bring our mind more and more towards this center. And the benefit of that is we become less like a person who gets swung by the praise, destroyed by the blame, right? Swung by the good things, destroyed by the bad things. We become more like a person who has a solid center, a person who's close to the trunk, a person who won't fall when the branches break. And when we become like this, we become a person who can keep climbing higher because there's a goal at the end. There's a top to the tree to reach. And this top of the tree is a nice place to be.